So thank you all so much for being here. And if you are watching, if you're catching up on the recording, it's great to have you with us as well. And I hope you find this really useful. We are so excited about an A to Z of Parenting for Faith, and it's great to be able to do this launch online. And to have some people joining. We've got some people who contributed to the book, which is amazing. Lucy, who edited it, and Rachel, who is, I'm going to call you the most prolific contributor, Rach. There were lots of titles we could have given you, but I counted it up and you contributed to 37 chapters out of 52. So that could have been our quiz. How many chapters have you did Rachel was she part of? So the way the evening's going to work is we are I'm going to have a little chat with Lucy just about how the book came about and who it's for, some of the different ways that we can use it. And then we're going to count down the top 5 parenting topics as voted by you guys. So we will start at number 5 and down to number 1. So Sunday afternoon top 40 vibes, except much quicker. And there are a few surprises in there. Some I could have predicted and some I couldn't. So I hope that's interesting to find out what they are. We'll share a little bit from the book and then we're going to throw some difficult questions at Rachel and just glean a bit more of her wisdom, because why not while she's here. And then we're going to go to a Q&A time. So if you've got questions as we go along about anything to do with the book, anything to do with the topics that we're talking about, or Christian parenting in general, you can type them in the chat as we go along. And Rachel and Lucy and maybe a couple of other of us will answer those at the end. If there's a question you want to ask, but you'd rather not it be linked to your name publicly, you can just direct message Parenting for Faith. And Becky Sedgwick is behind that screen and will give that to us anonymously. So if you don't want your name linked to the question, that's totally an option. But feel free to sit back and relax. Do make use of the chat. We would love your wisdom as well. So when we're talking about topics, if you've got something to add that's worked really well where you are, or has totally bombed and you want to save the rest of us, good resources, questions, anything like that, we'd love you to interact on the chat. So please do make the most of that. That'd be great. So Lucy, if you could join me, if you could come up here.
Hello.
Fantastic. Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Anna. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Can you, to start off with, can you just introduce yourself? I know lots of people will know you already, but you wear many hats, so share some of them with us.
Hello, yes, I'm Lucy. I run a ministry called the Hopefield Family, but I put that on pause for a couple of years in 2023-24 to come and cover various people's maternity leave at BRF. So I did a year of digital marketing, that was 2023, and then in 2024 I had the very scary honor of being Anna for a year while she was taking some time off for maternity leave. And that was the time that this book kind of started to form as an idea. So I ended up being really involved in it. So it was good fun.
Really involved in it means she did almost all the work. Let's translate that here. Brilliant. So can you tell me a bit more, kind of what inspired the book? How did it come together? Tell me all about that process. Why does it exist? And who's it?
Yeah, so I think the fun thing about taking over someone's maternity leave is that you sort of land in the middle of projects that have kind of started, and of course when you leave projects in the middle as well, because things don't kind of always wrap up neatly into those months. And one thing that happened, which I don't think Anna actually warned me about, probably because it was so much in its infancy that it wasn't even, no, your handover was amazing. I'm not dissing your handover, but I think it was so much in its infancy, I don't think it had even really crossed your mind to kind of share. But quite soon into the maternity sort of leave stint, it became apparent that there'd been some kind of vague talks about a podcast book, but no one really knew what that would look like, because a podcast, it's not a book, and what, how are we going to make this work? And so it was a real joy to be able to sort of craft that idea. And very quickly we kind of came across this format where we thought, well, what would be really, really helpful is to kind of drill down and pick out the best bits of the podcast on some different topics that will be relevant to parents, and kind of make them super bite size and super easy to find. Because the thing with the podcast is it's been going for 6 years, I think. 2019 was it?
7, something like that. Yeah.
7 years, yeah. So it's over 200 episodes. There's so much content, which is amazing, but it's really difficult to find if you just need a quick answer on something, your kids asked you about something, or they've come home from school with something. And so we thought, how great would it be if we could kind of put that into like a sort of handbook type thing? That's the best way I can describe it. And so this idea kind of came together for this book where we would cover topics in a bite-sized way. So I think we first kind of came up with I'm really pleased we didn't do this, with 100 topics to cover. And I'm really pleased we didn't, because the book's quite thick anyway, and the book would be like War and Peace if we'd done that. So we didn't do that. We drilled down to 50. It was really, really hard. 50 common parenting topics, things that you're likely to come across at some point in your parenting journey. And then we had to like edit down these amazing podcast episodes where guests are given so much wisdom. And sometimes there were 4, 5, 6 episodes on the same topic. So, after the transcripts were made, maybe 30, 40,000 words that I had to try and like squeeze down into 1,000 words. It was an absolutely impossible task, and I was tearing my hair out. But it was also like a great joy to do that, because it just felt like we could drill down and just like pick out like the most useful bits to sort of help somebody in that moment when they're just like sitting on the loo or waiting for the kettle to boil or whatever. They just need a quick bit of wisdom. And then, of course, you can go and listen to that full podcast episode for a little bit more depth as well.
Yeah, it is really helpful, isn't it? We were joking last night that I've read it before several times, but now that it's an actual book in my hand, last night I was like, I forgot that topic was in there. I'll just read that bit. And then I ended up reading another one and it linked to something else. And Laura had actually messaged me and half an hour had gone and we hadn't got there. So who's it for? Like, who's really going to benefit from this, and where can you see it being used?
I probably shouldn't say all parents, but I kind of do mean all parents, because I think the topics like go from babyhood right through to even having adult children. Like there's pretty sure I've got the book somewhere in my room. Not somewhere, but right, that was not well planned. I should have had it to hand. I don't know where it is. I do have it. There is definitely a chapter on sending kids off to university and what that looks like. There's a chapter on bedtimes, and there's a chapter on adding another sibling to the mix, and things that you might be experiencing earlier on in your parenting journey. There's things that are appropriate for school-age children. There's things that are appropriate for teenagers. I really do think it's like a handbook that can kind of take you all the way through, and I think that's its selling point. So any Christian parent who just wants to be really intentional in the way that they disciple their kid, I think this book is just brilliant for.
Thank you. The other thing that came to mind for me was like youth leaders or church leaders, children's leaders. When you get a parent come up to you, a carer, and say, we're going through this at the moment. How do you suggest we handle it? Or is there anything that you could do to help us? I would have loved, as a children's pastor, to have this on the shelf and be like, yeah, here's some short curated wisdom. And if you like listening to podcasts, here's a couple of podcast episodes that go more in depth on this exact topic. I also thought it would be amazing, like small group resource. If you've got a midweek coffee group or a pub trip or something, that's a year's worth of, you pick a topic that's relevant to you all, and you either spend the 5 minutes reading it, or if you've got a bit more time, dig into the podcast episode. There's questions as part of it, and just co-journey, like walk alongside each other and help and support each other through whatever those topics are. So
yeah, definitely. It's like a reference guide, isn't it? So like, because it's of its A to Z nature and everything's alphabetical. So like, yeah, for any leader who kind of wants to, needs to answer a topic very quickly, it's right there. For a group, it would be excellent. You could even have some copies like out at your toddler group, because although it's a Christian parenting guide, actually there's so much practical wisdom in there. That could even be a way in for somebody, I think, because they'll find such wisdom in the book and think, oh, okay, maybe the Bible's got a bit more wisdom about how to raise my child. So I really think it has a number of uses. So yeah, thank you for reminding me.
yeah, I think it's a create a window book. I was thinking, if that's out on your someone who's babysitting or around for dinner or whatever, I'd pick that up and be nosy about how someone else is parenting and what decisions what's kind of guiding those decisions. And it's very much framed, those of you who know our parenting for faith approach, that there is no one right way. The parent or the primary carer, you're the expert in your child. So it's using the key tools of parenting for faith and giving you things to think about and consider, but it's not here are the steps 1, 2, 3 for perfect, shiny Christian child, because that's not our vibe at all. So hopefully that makes it useful in lots of different contexts. Lucy, thank you so much for all your hard work on it, and thanks for sharing just now. That's great. So we're going to give you a little bit of a flavour now of some of those topics, as I say, as voted by you. So we're going to do a little bit of a countdown, starting with number 5. Now, number 5 begins with A, which is very convenient and pleasing to me because it means it's my first post-it here. Anyone want to take a guess in the chat at what was the 5th most common parenting topic that you asked for that starts with an A? This is where you don't know what's in here, so this is tricky, but can you think of something people might have asked? Angels. A is for, it's tricky. It's all right. I'm not going to make you guess all of them. That was just for my so this one kind of, I love that this came up. A is for arguments. Yes, arguments was number 5 on the list, which was great. So I'm going to flip to the arguments chapter, handily near the beginning. And Rachel is the main contributor in this one, and it covers why we want more than obedience in our children, talking about sin, faith arguments, all kinds of stuff. But I'm going to read a little extract now from this bit, which is called Progress, Not Perfection. This is Rachel speaking, and it now feels weird me saying this with Rachel right here, but it's all right. I'll crack on. I won't try and do your accent. It'll be okay. Rachel says, I often advocate telling kids, I don't expect you to be perfect. And I can't expect me to be perfect because I'm not finished yet. I'm still growing. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, but we get to help each other. That's a wonderful thing. So when we argue, I like the when, not if. When we argue, we've got to have grace. It's progress, not perfection. We don't expect our kids to be perfect next time. We just expect them to try to make progress. Sometimes we'll try something and it won't work, but that's okay because we're on the same team and we're trying to figure out this together. Phew, said every parent in the whole land ever. So, Rachel, if you want to come and join me, I've got a question for you about this. And hopefully we'll get some more questions in the chat as well, because this is a big topic. We all argue whether or not we pretend that we don't. This sounds great, but how does it actually work in the moment? You're there with your teenager, your kid, emotions are high. We both just want the other person to listen to us. Like, that sounds great, but tell me, how does that actually work?
Well, I think it's a really interesting question because the word argue comes with a whole different stuff. Like, is this an obedience question? As in, I've asked you to do something and we got to do this, but which is one aspect. But a lot of the arguing that we do isn't actually about obedience. It's about, I want you to do something, you want me to do something, and there's a clash of wants. And I love in that phrasing of the question that you said was, we just want them to listen to us. And I would suggest that the kids are also deeply wanting us to listen to them and hear the things. And so for me, if emotions are high and everyone's trying to be listened to, one of the good things to have in your mind is that right now in this conflict, not the obedience one, but just the conflict, you're teaching your kid how to deal with conflict when they're in their future friendships and in their future marriages. And so it's a helpful thing to think that this is a great opportunity to teach them how to do this thing well. Do I want this to be the pattern for the rest of their lives? And so one of the things that's really helpful is to seek to understand them and have them understand you. And this isn't every argument, but this is these are these moments to go, ooh, we can discuss conflict. And so if you just step back and go, emotions are high, and it's because you want me to hear you, and it's because I want you to hear me. So let me start. I want to understand everything what you're saying, because until I understand it, I can't actually talk about it well, can I? So let's just sit down and tell me what you want me to understand. And switching it from I want you to listen to me to I want to understand. And it can be the simplest thing of I really want this or I don't like this. And it doesn't have to be like this deep, super serious thing, but when they feel like they don't have to fight to be heard, then you can model what it means to understand. And you can say, oh, I understand. You wanted the purple underwear today because it makes you happy inside. And you've been sad today and it makes you want to happy. I understand what it means to feel like I want to be happy. And so does that sound like I understand what you want. Great. Now, I would love for you to understand what I'm saying. I'm really worried that we're going to be late today. And if we're late, that's going to make them feel sad. And all of a sudden you're in that conversation that teaches them how to understand, right? How can we problem solve this together? And so then you're teaching how to understand first. And that could be fast, that could be slow, that can be, I want to understand, but we don't have time. So let's hold it, let's get there, and then let's understand later. And there's something about teaching them how you have to verbalize what we're doing. And so if we're saying, let's figure this out, because we're on the same team and I need to understand and you need to understand. And we've seen so often, particularly with teenagers, that then leads to group problem solving. So if you can say, I get that you want to go to the party because of all of these different things, I need you to understand all of the things that stress me out, make me worried. And so can you tell me why my worries are not necessary? And then you're in a conversation where you're on the same team saying, how can we, now that I've understood your fears and you can, and I've understand your wants, how do we do this together? And so it's that little pivot that can be helpful. And then you find a way forward together because that's what I want for their marriages. That's what I want for their future friendships. That's what I want for them in colleague situations. And so when you have a moment where you can do that with an argument, it's really helpful. If you can't do it in the moment, to say, right now, I just need us to get our bodies in the car, but I want to come back to this because it's important that we understand each other and I want you to be heard. It just can't be right now. And so you're voicing that.
I love that because you're taking the scary out of, let's just stop this thing happening because I don't like it, and actually using it as an opportunity. And one of the things we've been doing on the podcast this year is bringing in different people to discuss these chapters and talk about them. And I really enjoyed the one on arguments. Caitlin Body joined me from Edinburgh, and she was talking a lot about as a single parent with a single child, how they like really lock horns sometimes, and some really creative ways that they'd come up with being able to share what it was that was really at their heart and kind of get out of the situation and do that. And I found it so challenging and so helpful. It was absolutely brilliant.
What episode podcast is that?
There's a link that's flown in. No, it's not that one. There's a link that will appear in a little bit. It was the beginning of this year. It was January of this year. So we'll see that there.
Fab.
We could talk about this for ages, but I'm going to whiz us on to the next one. So coming in at number 4, it was a topic that starts with S. I would like you to type in the chat what you think it was. Was it science? Was it shame? Was it sin? Was it sex? These are all in there. Yeah, Rachel thinks sex. You know, Rachel, so this is cheating.
Well, I don't know. It could change.
Very good guess. Number 4. Lots of people think social media. Interesting. It is, in fact, any more guesses? Just sex and social media. The chat for this is going to look really weird. Coming in at number 4, it was, oh no, and I've just ruined the next one. But coming in at number 4, it was school. I guess it makes sense. Kids are in school a lot, right? It takes up a huge amount of their time. So the school chapter covers a few different things. It talks about preparing our children for a non-Christian world. And what it's like for them to be in school. There's a bit about choosing a secondary school or how you choose a school and what's important to you. And a bit too on disagreeing with school, like what do you do when the school is teaching something that you don't agree with or not handling a situation in the way that you want. So I'm going to read a little quote again. It's even weirder now. Your face is big, Rach, but I'm going to go with it. You said this: if your child is getting flack, equip them to talk about their faith rather than making them, and I quote, the ultimate defender of all Christianity. Most of the time, kids just need some encouragement to not worry about having all the answers, but to be able to say, I know God is real because. Some kids love apologetics and we can equip them for that. But actually, it's about enabling your kids to be authentic and share their understanding of the hope that they have. Again, so helpful. What are some really practical ways that we can equip them to talk about faith? That sounds great that they don't need to know all the answers, but what does this look like in the playground, on the walk to school, on the bus, on Monday?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to give your kids like the 5 things that they generally are going to grab about, because their friends will generally talk about church, God being real, the sort of does God answer your prayers? The sort of basic things. And so it can be really helpful to, as part of your family conversation with your kid, help them identify things that you can pull out. So things like, what's your favorite part about church? Sometimes kids will be like, nothing. And sometimes they'll be like the people or my friend being there. And sometimes it could be, I really like the kids group, or it can be, I really like sitting and talking with John. The snacks, nice one. The snacks is something. And even for us, we're like, actually, we want them to have a really good God thing to be able to say, church is amazing because Jesus meets me in deep ways. But their genuine answer might be snacks. And what you kind of want them to be able to do is when someone says, do you go to church? You want your kid to be like, yeah, I love the snacks. And to have a genuine positive answer about church is helpful for them because that's their answer. And I think when we look at evangelism or wanting to empower our kids to be a light in the darkness, we want them to have the answer that we want them to have. But if snacks is their genuine answer, great. And so for us to sit around and go, what is your favorite thing about church? Oh, that's really interesting. When people ask me about church, I tend to say, I really like this. And what do you like saying? Oh, snacks, great. Which means that when someone says, you don't go to church, do you? And they go, yeah, I do, and it has great snacks. It means that they feel like they have something to grab, rather than feeling like they've got to figure out the why of that. And so some things are that, ask them stories of like, what's one way you feel connected to God? And everyone's different. And so when someone's then asks them, well, God's not real, then they go, actually, yeah, and I like connecting him through art, gives them an answer, because they then have their answer for what it is. And often, on the fly, not every kid is good to come up with it. But if, as part of your just life at home, that has been a conversation you have had. So I wrote down just a couple of things like, what's your favorite part about church? What's one way you feel connected to God? What's one time God helped us as a family? That's really helpful to have in their back pocket for, God doesn't answer prayers, because then they go, yeah, he did. And it's that one time this God helped us, our family. And if we don't actually remind ourselves of those stories and have that as part of our family conversation, they don't know where to pull them. But if we just have that as part of a prep thing, how to say, I don't know. And sometimes it's really helpful to just be like, hey, someone asked me a question at work and I didn't know the answer to it. And so I said, I don't know. I'm going to have to ask someone about that, because I don't know some of the questions that people at my work ask me. Is really helpful to model, because they need to know that I don't know is okay. It doesn't mean that other people won't believe in God. It means I don't know is an okay answer. And so I think one of the powerful things is to create windows into your life as well of what it looks like, because kids experience that kind of challenging at school, but we almost never talk about the kind of challenging we get at work or at the school gates or something. And so to tell those stories and create a window into your life of saying, actually, I was talking about someone there, and they were saying that God doesn't, God's not real, and they don't know why the church exists. And I thought, that's really interesting. I forgot people don't know about that. So when someone asked me, do you believe in God? I said, yeah, actually I do, because I feel connected to him in this way. And to create that as a normal thing that you can talk about God in these ways, and it comes right back to the 4 or 5 things you've equipped them in, then they always feel like they've got those things. And for some of our kids who are struggling with faith, that makes it really hard for them to feel like they have to defend Christianity. And sometimes they need a bit of permission to be like, it's okay to be honest with your friends and to say, this is actually where I am with my faith journey. But I still go to church because it's important to my family, and I'm still thinking about it, because it's okay to be open. I never expect you to perform for somebody else, your faith, because it's about sharing your hope. And I want to support you in all of those areas. And so giving them some practice of answering it and giving them windows into somebody else can be a really helpful way of doing it.
So good. Take out the performance, take out the panic with a little bit of practice. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Really helpful. Thank you. I can't get you to guess the next one because I ruined it with my overclick. So you saw, I think, before, we didn't have a number 3. We had a joint second. So for the record, these were jointly in second place. But the next one that you guys voted for that you wanted to hear was church engagement, which was encouraging, I thought. Though I think it's interesting that this is what's come up that people want to hear about. So let's find that chapter back near the beginning, Anna. Church engagement. Okay, when you hear the different subheadings within this is excellent. Okay, what to do when your teenager is disengaged with church, when extracurricular activities clash with church, when your child doesn't like your church, how to help your child find a church when you leave home, and my personal favorite, when you don't like church. Yes, there is an entire section on that, and that makes me happy that we've acknowledged that and talked about it. So excellent. Okay, it's time for our Rachel quote. And no, Jess, I will not do the accent. Teaching our kids how to make decisions about church is important. It's about values, not style, and your approach to worship, because you can connect with God anywhere. So when do you think we should start including our children in making decisions about church, particularly for themselves? And what are some of the questions that we could be asking to draw that out? So, with your baby, they just have to come with you. Tough. Mm-hmm. Your 25-year-old is probably totally going to make their own decision. What's in the middle, and how do you help them to make those decisions?
Okay. I would broaden what we mean by making decisions about church, because right now it becomes, do they come or do they not come? When do they have a choice of coming or not coming? But actually, that's not the only choice about church. And so for me, I'd start including them in decisions about church from as young as they can make decisions. But it's not, do I come, do I not come? But it's all the thousands of choices that you have when it comes to church. Like, how am I wanting to engage today? When you come to church and you hit worship, are we going to sing really loud today? Are we going to lay on the floor? Are we going to just be quiet and listen to the words? Because those are choices about how to engage with church, or where are we going to sit, or where are we going to serve, or who are we going to help today? Because somebody needs help in this room. How are we going to help today? Or what should we go to this week? We can only go to one thing, but this month we're going to go to one extra thing because it's important to be involved in church more than on a Sunday. So as a family, which one do we want to go to? Is it going to be the prayer meeting, or is it going to be the outreach to elderly mimes? And so then you can choose as a family where that is, because if the only choice is do I go or not, then their brain goes to do I go or not. But actually, it's how much do I engage, and where am I needed, and what is God saying, and all of those questions. And so then as they get older, the question is not just, do I like this or not? Because if we give them no other choices besides that, then the question sort of implodes on ourselves and becomes, is this making me happy? Is this entertaining? Am I bored or not? And that's not the question that our hearts are supposed to dwell on. The choice is, where am I needed? What is God doing? How am I connecting with God today? And therefore, if your kid is used to those questions, then it's not, I'm bored, but the question can be, I feel disconnected from people, or I feel like I'm not meeting with Jesus here and I'm struggling to engage. And so your conversations become much more interesting, because we're teaching them how to engage. And when you feel like it's not working for you, there's more pots to pull from in those conversations. And so I'd start having those questions, from the very beginning. And the other thing is to listen to what they're saying, because often it doesn't come across as decisions. And so even just you were saying about what are some of the questions we can ask them. I find kids freeze when you ask a question sometimes of something like this, but often they're answering the question already by what they're complaining about, or what they're saying, or what they're choosing. And so some of that is, rather than going, what are your values for church, saying, it sounds really interesting because you've been saying you don't have anyone to play with. And it's really important that we feel connected with people at church. That's part of what Jesus did, was he put us into family. I wonder what we could do to help us feel more connected to people. because some of the things we're called to is be connected to people of lots of different ages. And you're more than just a 5-year-old. You're also someone who loves art, and you're someone who loves singing. And I wonder who also loves art at church and helping to problem solve that. And so you will begin to see what their values for church are, about what they complain about, what they feel sad about, what they're frustrated about. And you can then pull that out and help wrap a value around that. Because if they start saying, I don't, I'm bored. That's interesting because it sounds like the value is I want to be entertained at church, which will never, ever work because church is never going to be that entertaining. And so they're just setting themselves up to fail if that's a value. And that's an interesting conversation to have because then you can say, sometimes I feel bored with church or what that looks like or what church is for. And so noticing what they're saying can be a great way rather than asking a direct question.
It's so helpful. A phrase I've learned from you is an invitation to a great conversation. Lots of these things like, I hate church, I don't want to go, I don't like this bit of it, all those kind of things that I think naturally in us as parents just evoke panic of like, what does this mean? How do I respond to it? And just that mindset shift of this is an invitation to a great conversation. Let's be curious, let's explore it. Let's go a bit deeper and ask some questions. And you don't have to do that straight away. If you're like, I can't think about this right now, there's permission to come back to it as well. So good.
There's curious questions to have about this. There's so much understanding of it. All of these are absolutely invitations to a great conversation.
Love it. Okay, so we had a joint second, which I alluded to there. And this is something that actually we get asked about loads, and we've done so many different takes of it over the years. So it is the chapter with the longest title by an absolute mile because we really struggled to how to describe it. But we came up with partner on a different stage of faith journey. So this covers all sorts of things. So partners, but also ex-partners is something that we get asked about a lot. And so when they're completely not a Christian, they might be an atheist or agnostic, or when they're from a totally different faith, or just as varying different levels. One partner is very keen and passionate about serving and all sorts of aspects of church and faith being part of everyday life, and maybe the other partner is like would say that they had a relationship with God or that they believed in him, but it's not so involved in that way. And it's really tricky to know how to navigate that. So there is a whole chapter on this in the book. The quote isn't you this time, Rachel, so you can sit back. We are some really amazing friends of ours who have been doing parenting for faith for years, who are both married to people who aren't actively pursuing faith in the same way as them at the moment. So I'm going to read a quote from here. When you're in a relationship with somebody, they're involved in creating boundaries for your family. And that doesn't only have to be boundaries around meal times or going out or money, but also around the expectations of faith, whether you're on a similar point in your faith journey or a different point. When we had children, this is not me, this is Ruth speaking, my husband and I created some boundaries together around what faith would look like, because it's such a big part of my life and because he's open to it being a part of our family life. So, for example, he does come to our church because it's really difficult for me to work for church and look after our children. He comes to help the children, and that was a boundary that we agreed on together. However, he doesn't want to spend his whole summer holiday at Christian festivals, so that's a boundary that he put in. Whatever position you're in, if you have a discussion about boundaries and set them together, then actually you're all involved in the circle of discipleship wherever you are. So, great wisdom here, and boundary making sounds really beneficial, really helpful. But how might someone going through this process explain it to other people in church who might not understand their relationship or the way they make decisions? One of the things we very often hear when this question comes in is, part of what makes this difficult is because of expectations or perceived expectations from other people in church or friends or family members. How do we deal with that?
Well, I've got an opinion about this one. They can worry about themselves. I think there's something about I almost just want to shove courage into people's hearts that God is giving you wisdom and he is blessing your relationships. And it is not your job to justify yourself to anybody, but you can share confidently. And so I think there's something in feeling confident to share without feeling the burden of justifying yourself because everyone has to agree with you. I mean, we don't do that in any other relationship where I feel like now I have to turn to another Christian at church and be like, just to know, just so you know, I know that you're thinking about it, and I just want to say that it's my job. I bet I can say, thanks for asking. You know, this is how we are navigating it, and it's working out really well. And so feel free to remember that you're explaining because you are sharing your life with someone, not because you have to justify yourself to them. Um, but also, I think I really like how Ruth and others talk about this, in that you are confident to explaining your life, and that the center of how you view your partner, ex-partner, is not their faith status, it's the whole person. And often,
Yeah.
particularly in church circles, it can be reduced to, oh, this is your unbelieving spouse, or you know that becomes the main frame. And actually one of the best things that we get to do is advocate for partners or ex-partners to be like, you know, it's a real blessing that, you know, he's in my life or she's in my life, and these are the things I'm grateful for, and how we choose to do this and to make these decisions together, and the support or not support of, you know, of how that looks, but this is what it looks like for us. And so feeling like you can share it positively and talk about your partner as the whole, or ex-partner as a whole person that is a blessing, is involved in your kids' lives, and how we do that is that positive thing to say, see this person as them, because I want you to love them as their person. But also I think it's helpful to share how you want other people to engage with that, because it's not just back off, but it's also, here's a complete and total person. And my desire is that he always feels welcome when he walks in. And so what I really appreciate from you is anytime he comes, to not worry about trying to give him stuff. Believe me, we have conversations, but actually just making him feel welcome and comfortable and seen for himself would be a real blessing to me and to my kids. And so if you could do that for me, I'd appreciate that. Because often people don't know how to be helpful or how to welcome, and actually saying, you know, my desire is that he doesn't feel overwhelmed by 1,000 communications from church, or whatever that boundary is that you've decided, to get your church on board with how he can feel respected and loved as a person, and to support you and your family, so that this can be a beautiful place for both of you to thrive. And so feel confident to share, but not justify yourself, and help them know what would be helpful and what approach you need from them.
So helpful, and helpful for how we think about welcoming people in and sharing stuff, and really good things in the comments as well. You know, if you're not part of the solution or help, or if you're not part of the problem or helpful in the solution, kindly butt out. Which I feel like is what you wanted to say. Yes.
Yes. Excellent.
So we've got lots of different things on this, and kind of yeah, some of the different variations of that. But I think that as a headline is really helpful, and obviously there's more in the book.
So many excellent guests on this that I just want to say that I just a real testimony to the so many people who have been willing to share this, and to share this well, with Parenting for Faith team, and the podcasts and the writing. So I would really, I mean, there's so many excellent contributors across this whole book and across the podcasts. But there's been a bravery on this one that I just really want to cheer for.
Yeah. Yes, I should have said at the beginning. So there's over 50 contributors, some of which are really big names in the Christian world, and we were kind of surprised they wanted to come on our podcast, to be honest. That's Lucy, hunting people down. She's very persistent. And some are such faithful, wise, honest, vulnerable people, just who we know are really living out parenting for faith well, and we've quizzed them because we want to know how they do it and what it looks like for them. So you've got a whole mixture here of people who are like experts in their fields or and done certain things, and really normal regular people who are just sharing what they know. But that combination is really powerful. So yeah, love it. Thank you. So drum roll, please. Yeah, sorry, you're not children. Yes, exactly. I want to get you to like pat on your thighs. For the top topic that you voted for, you have in fact already guessed it. It is social media. This, yeah, wasn't a huge surprise. We thought this might come up. I was interested where it was. I got asked recently by a child what if there was no, like, they were very confused about there being no internet when I was a child. And the main question was, what did we do in online safety lessons? And I had to explain that we didn't have them. And it just made me think of this of, I think that's why one of the reasons we get so freaked out by social media is we got no template to copy because it wasn't something that our parents had to deal with. So the social media chapter looks at getting our heads around social media and kind of how to think about it, how to explore it, and really discipling our kids as we make choices in it. Shout out to Becky, she contributed to this chapter as well. But the final quote is from you, Rachel, because I feel that's fitting. Just because other kids are using it doesn't mean that yours has to. You get to choose what they engage with and when. You are the expert in how your kid is, how their heart works, and how their character is developing. Learning about social media is just information that you can acquire. Parenting your kids through it draws mostly on your knowledge about your kid. This is my addition, but as in not your knowledge about social media. That's not the most important thing. Once you know enough about this new realm, you can apply your already good parenting to it. So, Rachel, it can feel difficult, if not impossible, to stop our children going on social media. How do we balance, protecting them, keeping them safe, but also giving them independence and choice?
Yeah, I think we feel again like it's this switch, like they either have access to social media or they don't. And so when do we flip the switch that says, and now you have access to social media? And some of it is just that if school is giving them online safety lessons, then I think we need to give them sort of head and heart safety lessons about what social media is. And every kid is different on that, but it can be really helpful to just either when your kid's starting out or even when your kid's in it, to say, hey, I just learned this thing that if you look at it for 40 minutes, your brain starts seeing your own face differently in the mirror, or whatever new research that has come out. And say, and that gets me really worried because I see you on it, we have our little thing that tells us how long we've been on it. And just to have those actual conversations that says, how does it? We know that it happens even if we don't notice that. And we know that people sometimes who look at it that long have these kind of thoughts in their heads. And if you notice those thoughts in your head, one of the things that's really helpful is to look at it less. And I've noticed that in my mind that happens. And so what I'd like us to do is to reduce it. Or if I notice that you're looking in the mirror a lot more than you used to, I'm going to flag that up and say, hey, I'm noticing that you're talking about how you look at yourself more. And that's not a fruit that I want to see in you because it's not healthy for your head or your heart or something like that. And so keeping a conversation going about what's happening and giving them little bits of information can be so helpful. And so I've seen parents, rather than take away social media as a punishment, that it's something almost like whether you're eating too much candy or too much sugar, like what is actually healthy for you, rather than what is a good, this is what you get if you're good, and this is what gets restricted if you're not. It's actually how do we consume something for health, and what does health look like? And health is what thoughts come up in our brain when we're not looking at it, or thoughts that come up when we are looking at it. And so sometimes it's about looking through the media feed together. I've known some parents who are like, it sat down and explained the algorithm and then said, let's look at your feed. What is coming up a lot? Is it a lot of people talking about how they can make themselves look better? Some of that is just society trying to tell you don't look good enough. And that's not a good, healthy message to have in your brain. I've known other parents who have said, what do you think the 5 messages are that society is trying to tell you through the social media that you see? Or who are the people who were on this that you don't actually know or clicked on? And just that sort of basic education of how is it affecting me? I know some families who have started like check-ins every 2 weeks. Is one family I know. Every 2 weeks on a Friday night, they all talk about their social media consumption and what's been coming up a lot and how that's been affecting them and whether they're going to adjust something for the next 2 weeks, because it's something we all talk about. Sometimes if we're just saying, I think you should do something, then you're getting a power dynamic. But if we're saying this is this is a thing that we all got to be careful of in this world. How's it working out for you? How's it working out for me? Then it's a health check in the same way of like in my family, it's have we all gone outside today? Have we done that? Because it's really good to check. Have we been sleeping 6 hours? It's just that health check of are we okay? And if we don't teach our kids that that is a metric like exercising and eating well and doing things, if we don't give them that, then they're not watching that. It just becomes something that makes me happy rather than something that in little things can be okay and in big things can be dangerous. And how do we manage that? Our job is to give them management skills so that they can adjust for the fruit of the spirit in their lives rather than restrict it like that. So, but because you know your kid, you know whether it's little tiny doses, whether it's this, whether it's watching something and talking about the crazy guy who said something, you'll know how to approach it. But I think it's really important that we help them get on top of it because at some point they're in our homes, but at some point they're going to not be out of our homes, and we get to help them in that now.
Yeah, once again, it's about equipping them, discipling them and equipping them for the whole world, not just a behavior. And it really touched too on the other reason that this is probably the number one topic is not just that it's not something that we have a template for, but it's because it affects all of us as well. And, many of us find it challenging because it makes us think about our own social media use or screen use, whatever it might be. I keep talking about it. My team are fed up, but I read this book recently called How to Break Up with Your Phone, and it just has so many good facts and information. And just like were saying about dropping in that fact, I keep being like, oh, did you know this? And it's made me think about this differently. So good. So really helpful for us to have those health check for ourselves and then create windows into it and frame it and do it all together. Love it. So good. So that was very much a whistle stop tour. So that was a tiny bit of wisdom from 5 of the 50 chapters, but you get the idea, hopefully now, of what it's like and how you can dip into it and use different bits. We are going to open up for Q&A now. So if you've got any questions that you would like to ask Rachel or Lucy or any of the Parenting for Faith team, please type those in the chats. If you, people who join us a little bit later, if you've got questions you'd like to ask but don't want your name linked to them, if you just direct message Parenting for Faith, and Becky is behind that and she will feed those in. But hopefully it's whetted your appetite and you would like to buy this book either for yourself or so that there's a copy in your church or like Lucy was saying, out at a toddler group or whatever it might be. So if you would like to do that, we have a discount code, which will come up on the screen now. We'll send it out to you in email as well, so don't worry. But it is AZ, as in A to Z, PFF, and then book launch. And it's 15% off. So yes, please do make the most of that. This is valid for a week. So if you're thinking of using it for Christmas presents or to get quite a few copies, if you want to do it as part of a book club or podcast club, something like that, send those messages around to work out who wants some and do a group order. And yes, if you buy several, obviously you only have to pay the postage once as well. So yep, that is there. And as I say, we'll send that out to you as well. But let's just see if we've got any questions. Oh yes, very practical question. How much is the book? $12.99. Books are getting more expensive, aren't they? But it's really chunky, it's really quite chunky. If you think of it like 50 mini books, then it's very good value. Okay, Rachel, we've got a question, which is what do you say to a child who says their dad says God doesn't exist? So I think this is coming back to the partner topic.
Yeah, so I say that's fascinating, and that's an invitation to a great conversation because then you could say, oh, I wonder why, what does he think? And then your kid can say, or they can say, I don't know. And so that's really interesting. People think different things, and I tend to put it in a wider context rather than it being like, well, yes, your dad doesn't believe, but that's not going to be not good for him. And instead of taking it out, go, oh, it's really interesting. Some people have lots of different reasons for how they've arrived at that conclusion. Some people think it because they've never had an experience with God or haven't encountered that, so that's a new idea to them. Some people have thought a lot and have decided, "Ooh, I don't think that." The reasons I think that God does exist are because of these things, and I know this is what's in my life, but it's it's not my job to beat someone else and make them do it. My job is to connect with God and to share what I do, just like I share it with you. I talk about it. Your dad shared with you what he believed too, and it's everyone's job to listen and think and connect with God and see what he is like and decide for yourself. That's the thing. God says that you're allowed to decide for yourself. And that's a really interesting conversation. How do you feel about it when your dad says that? And so for me, I tend to pick it up, put it in the wider context so it allows it to be there, pivot it to sort of where I think, and then bring it back to the kid and allow the kid to talk about their feelings about that. Because sometimes the kid is saying it because they're saying, and therefore it's true. Sometimes they're saying it because it makes them feel worried or scared or confused, and that's then a conversation to have. And so it's not about trying to make the kid feel better about his dad. It's about putting the kid's dad in the context of a wider, and then letting your light shine about what that is and bringing it back to the kid. And then if he says, I'm scared, then it's like, well, I get that. I have a friend who doesn't know Jesus. Then you're in a conversation of people who love people who think differently than you. And that's a tough thing. And this is how we love them and encourage them and continue to do what God said, which is share what you believe with grace and peace, and listen and love people and where they are.
Thank you. That's so helpful. And it's such a powerful combination as well when you do that alongside creating windows. So we have 5 key tools of parenting for faith. And the first one is creating windows, which is sharing and showing a bit of your own relationship with God. And so often when we unpack this, where kind of a partner or an ex-partner has a different view, people find it really freeing and releasing that it doesn't need to be an argument about truth and what's right and what's wrong and how things are handled all the time, but that their job is to authentically show and share what it looks like for them, and how they've reached the decisions they've reached and what helps them and what encourages them and what they struggle with, and just help their child to go on that journey. Yeah, and that combination is just so powerful. So thank you.
Awesome.
Great question.
In the wider view too, that's why we have a church. So my dad knew and loved Jesus, but there's lots of people in churches whose dads also had similar views. And so sometimes a kid can feel alone in that if it looks like everyone around them. But if you have people who also have had that experience of their dads not doing that, it's really helpful to connect them in some way. And so that other people can say, oh, my dad felt the same and I know how that feels. And this is how I did it. And so there's also that wider church support around someone that can be really helpful too. We're never designed to parent
Yeah.
alone.
Brilliant. So good. We are getting towards the end of the evening, but if there are any other questions you want to throw in, pop them in the chat now. Just while we do that and see if there are any others, just a reminder that we will send out an email with that discount code, so you don't have to remember it. But feel free to click on the link and stick it in your basket now if that'll help you remember to do it. If you want to follow what we're doing, we're on Instagram and Facebook primarily at Parenting for Faith BRF. And we'd love to see you there. That will kind of keep you up to date with what's going on, or you can join our mailing list if you like doing that. And alongside all of this, I just want to say thank you so much for your questions. Thank you for your stories. Thank you for making the podcast what it is. A particularly big thank you to the contributors that we've got on the call tonight and who are going to be listening back to this recording. This book is what it is because you so vulnerably and honestly and helpfully shared often a bit of your own journey or your research or your life. So thank you so much for that. We're committed to keeping having those conversations on the podcast. It comes out every week on a Tuesday. It's about 20 minutes to half an hour, and it's really shaped by you and your questions and the things that you want encouragement with. You can find it on all good podcast platforms, or if you're a website person, go to parentingforfaith.org/podcast. And you can look at back episodes, all that kind of thing. But we've got some really big plans for the podcast. It is a leveling up. It's going to be video as well. So if you like to watch, I'm getting a co-host, and I won't reveal who it is, but she is amazing. And I think it's really going to help us unpack some topics some more. So do just subscribe to the podcast if you don't already, or follow, depending on whether you're doing it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever. And if you enjoy it, please like, rate, review, and subscribe. That's great. And we would love you to keep journeying with us. And there are 3 kind of main ways that you can do that. We really, really appreciate your prayers. If you are a person who prays with lists, please add us on, or a reminder in your phone once a week or something like that. And we so value your prayers for this ministry. You can also sign up to get prayer updates if you're a person who likes to know the specifics of what's going on, and we can send those to you. The second way you can join with us is by becoming a friend of Parenting for Faith. So that's becoming a regular giver of £2 or a month. That enables us to do things like keep producing the podcast every week for free, and keep getting this stuff out to people for free. We want to keep doing that. We can't do it without you. So we would love you to join us with that, or maybe your church if that's not for you personally. And the third thing is just to keep sharing stuff. If you find the book or the podcast or any of our resources or courses useful, just drop a WhatsApp message to a friend and say, hey, I listened to this podcast and I thought the topic would help you. Share in your church Facebook groups, like whatever it might be. But it brings us so much joy when you share things that have been helpful to you, and other people benefit as well. So thank you so much. We say to people, you might be able to do one of those things, or 2, or all 3. But if you can pray or give or share, we would be so grateful. I don't see any other questions. If I've missed some, can someone unmute or stick their hand up or do a dance? That would help me. But if not, I'm going to hand over to Rachel to wrap up. Could you just leave us with a bit of encouragement, maybe pray for us?
Yeah. This
Sorry, we didn't warn you about this.
No, I don't. I love encouraging people. I just want to encourage you. I think what I love about the podcast, and therefore the book, is that ordinary people doing ordinary things bring such wisdom, and that everyone's walk is such a powerful testimony to each other. And so I guess my encouragement is to continue to share your stories with each other in your local church communities and with us, so that we can learn from you. It is so easy to just say, well, I'm not an expert, or I've only known this for a little bit. And everyone's story gives us a little of insight into God and a little insight into how to live this journey well. And so just know your stories are valuable, and the way you live your life in your ordinary every day is powerful. And we would love to benefit from it, as with the people that God has placed around you. So share your stories, because you're significant. This book is just a collection of individual people's experiences, mistakes, and wisdom. And we could make 1,000 books from everyone we've ever met, including you. So let me just pray for you, for your ordinaries. God, I just thank you. I thank you, God, that you didn't die on the cross and raise again so that we could all do great things for Jesus, but that you died and rose again so that our ordinary everydays could be filled with the living God, that we may love you well, that we may know your love deep inside of us, and that we may have access to your guidance and your strength and your alongsiding in every moment of our lives. And so, Lord, I pray that you would just come fill our ordinaries. And I pray that you would fill the ordinary days of our children, that they may know you and walk with you, that they may lie down with you at night and have their dreams filled with you, that they may wake up and look forward to adventures with you, that their ordinary little joy-filled, grief-filled struggles of life may be completely covered by the God who walks alongside of them, and promises to guide them and love them and be with them in every step of the way. So I pray that you would give us wisdom beyond what we've earned, that you would open our eyes, that we may see children well, and that we may serve our church communities with a full heart, that we may walk in unity together side by side and see generation upon generation know you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you, Lucy. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I hope you found it a helpful evening and you have a brilliant rest of your weekend.
Thank you.